Today, I will be discussing reasons as to why Star Trek is the superior franchise to Star Wars. A brief history of Star Trek is that it was the first widely popular televised sci-fi series, and it ran its original course from 1966 to 1969. It followed the adventures of the familiar names of Captain Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and Scotty, along with the rest of the crew on the USS Enterprise, as it journeyed to where no man had gone before. A great quote given by the Mind Hut in its article titled 7 Reasons Why Star Trek is Better Than Star Wars states that Gene Roddenberry's original intent with Star Trek was to purposefully discuss ideas and issues that were cloaked in the allegory of futuristic space exploration. Star Trek used its show to speak about important issues going on in the world at the time, and also was quite prophetic in its vision of the future. One example of a Star Trek moment that it is most well known for is that it hosted the country's first ever televised interracial kiss. While this picture is not shocking to any of us today, you have to remember that this was done at the same time that Martin Luther King Jr. was advocating for equal rights of blacks in America. Chekhov, the young Russian who served as the navigator for the Enterprise, also doesn't raise any eyebrows today, but it is important to realize that at the time he was introduced in the original series, the United States was in the middle of the Cold War with the Soviet Union and fighting communists in Vietnam. Star Trek at the time was taking a big risk with its viewers by showing crew members from Russia working alongside Americans. Speaking of America's war in Vietnam, another thing that Star Trek did that was risky for the time that it came out was showing a captain doing everything in his power to come up with a peaceful alternative in situations where a more violent resolution was easily available. Many young Americans were against the war in Vietnam, and the crew members on the Enterprise held their same values and ideals, ideals that were not being represented by most American mediums at the time. Another way that Star Trek surpasses Star Wars is that it incorporates part of our history into the show, which can be entertaining for anyone familiar with the references that are being involved in the episode. One example of this is in the original series episode, Who Mourns for Adonis? This episode finds Captain Kirk and some of the crew on an alien planet where they come into contact with the gods of Greek mythology. Apparently, the aliens on this planet had at some point visited Earth, in which they were in contact with the Greeks, and who then created the Greek myths that we know of today. Another example of this would be in the episode Elaine of Troyes, where Roddenberry used some of the motifs present in the writings of Shakespeare. By incorporating bits of ourselves in not only the characters, but also within the writing and storylines, Star Trek successfully shows a piece of humanity within each episode. Some of the most thought-provoking episodes are the ones where the show had us examine ourselves through a sci-fi tinted lens. A great example of this is the episode Patterns of Force, where they encounter a world that is controlled by Nazis, showing that Star Trek was not afraid of examining some of the darkest points of human history. These episodes bring about an important aspect of Star Trek. Star Trek is about us. It's not about a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. The show gave us an opportunity to look at where mankind has come from and where it might be going. It shows a vision of the future in which many different people have come together in order to preserve freedom and keep peace throughout its run. While you might see some of yourself in Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, or maybe even Darth Vader, Star Trek shows us who we are as a people in every episode. It even shows us extreme versions of ourselves in the aliens that the Enterprise comes into contact with. The main characters of Star Trek also embody some of the most important aspects of humanity. In Captain Kirk, we see human will. In Spock, even though he's an alien, we see a representation of human logic. And finally, in McCoy, we see an embodiment of human compassion and empathy. While more people may be fans of Star Wars, and while the names Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader are identifiable to almost anyone regardless of whether they've seen the movies, everyone can identify themselves in the episodes of Star Trek. Another reason that Star Wars might be more popular is that it's instantly accessible to a young audience, whereas Star Trek requires a more mature audience to fully appreciate what it is. Another way of gauging sci-fi that was created some time ago is whether or not it was able to accurately represent what future technology would be like. Today I see no lightsabers, no speeder bikes, apart from the ones you can buy at Walmart. What I do see is the cell phone. One of the most iconic pieces of technology from the Star Trek show is, of course, the communicator. As you can see, it bears a striking resemblance to today's cell phones. Another piece of technology that was eerily accurate was the Personal Access Data Device, or PAD, which looks almost exactly like the iPad that you could be using to watch this video. Other pieces of accurate future technology are the Universal Translator, which is very similar to the translator apps you can now get on your smartphone, or the phaser, which is the most iconic weapon of the series, which functions just on a smaller, more compact level than today's directed energy weapons. Speaking of technology, you might be thinking during this speech that Star Wars surpasses Star Trek by leaps and bounds when it comes to the special effects that were used in the Star Wars movies, compared to the Star Trek television series. You're right. If you were to directly compare the two, then Star Wars would come out on top. But if you were to keep in mind that the budgets for the two were vastly different, then you might change your position. One of the main benefits of special effects is that it works as a way to bring you into the story, and also to capture your imagination and cause you to believe in what you're seeing, even if it's only for the duration of while you're watching it. While the Star Wars films were revolutionary at the time, I would contend that Star Trek gets the same effect for a fraction of the price and did it 11 years earlier. While the costumes might not hold up to Star Wars and the space battles don't look quite as clean, Star Trek still succeeds in bringing you into the story that is being told. You believe that the people you are seeing on screen are aliens representing a far-off world. You become scared for the lives of the crew as they fight in the space battle against the Romulans. So in this respect, Star Trek does just as good of a job as the Star Wars franchise. The ability to relate to the human spirit far outweighs Star Wars explosions and epic space battles. In conclusion, the strongest argument that Star Trek is better than Star Wars is simply that Gene Roddenberry created a utopian vision of the future in which the human spirit is able to overcome all odds. It shows the best and worst parts of the human condition, but it professes that the good in us has the power to conquer all. It lets us view the potential that we all have as a species to create a better future in which our brightest attributes shine more than our shortcomings. We can feel a connection to Star Trek more than to Star Wars because it is an examination of who we are instead of just an entertaining space opera. Star Trek not only entertains, but also teaches. It teaches us about ourselves, and it allows for self-analysis and what we want our legacy to be as a people. Thank you.